This week, we're continuing our conversation about cultural influences, and we're going to look specifically more at learning preferences and worldview. And when we talk about cultural influences on learning preferences and worldview, especially in the K through 12 classroom, we're looking at how students, their cultural backgrounds shape the way they think, learn, interact, and also interpret the world. So let's talk about communication styles, because this is really important, especially depending on where you come from or what culture you share. So we have two main cultural perspectives that we're going to look at. We're going to look at individualist cultures and then the collectivist cultures. So in individualist cultures, they emphasize the rights, goals, and identity of the individual, the student, myself, over those of the group, my classroom, my colleagues. And so in these individualist cultures, people are encouraged to be independent, self-reliant, and to express their personal opinions and achievement openly. So think about it like this, like I am responsible for myself. My successes or my failures, those belong to me. So in the contrast of that, though, is the collectivist culture, And in that one, those emphasize the needs, goals, and identity of the group, such as the family, community, or the nation, over those of the me, the individual. And so people see themselves as part of an interconnected network where cooperation, harmony, and loyalty are valued above personal ambitions. So the idea behind those are we succeed together. My identity is defined by my relationship with other people. And so in an individualist, that is more of what we see in American society. We are very individualistic. And so we prefer open discussions in the classroom, a lot of verbal communication. And then we also like to work on independent projects. We express our opinions and our achievements very openly within the classroom and with our peers. And then also identify the individual, the rights of the individual, and the goals of the individual, so myself. In a collectivist classroom, it would look more like more listening, use of subtle cues to maintain harmony, and more group work. And don't worry, we're going to get into group work in just a minute. But also the needs, goals, and identity of the group are more important than the individual, and you are more part of this interconnected network. So how do these approaches to learning, some of the core differences I want to look at is in the learning philosophy between the two, and that's why I have this chart for you. So let's look at these three different perspectives. One is the goal of education. So here in individualistic cultures, it is to develop independent thinkers and who are able to express personal ideas and achieve their personal successes. However, in a collectivist culture, like you're going to see in a lot of Latin cultures, a lot of Asian cultures, it is to develop responsible group members who contribute to family, school, and community harmony. The primary focus of an individualist culture is self-expression, critical thinking, and the individual achievement, compared to the collectivist, which is cooperation, social harmony, and respect for authority and group goals. And the motivation that drives people in individualist cultures is personal interest, curiosity, and self-improvement. However, in a collectivist culture, it's driven by group obligations, social approval, and collective well-being. So really what's going on here is students in an individualist culture, they prefer independent study. It is self-paced, learning, expressing personal opinions along the way. Competition is often encouraged. Think of your class rankings, your award ceremonies that you had in K through 12. There's a lot of competition there. Learning is viewed as a personal journey, and that success of your personal journey is up to you, no one else. Students are encouraged to challenge ideas and to ask questions, to debate more, and teachers expect students to show initiative and self-reliance. So in a U.S. classroom, students may be asked to debate or critique an author's argument, especially when you get into university settings or even in graduate school, bringing in your own perspective on an interpretation. Flip side, let's talk about collectivist cultures for a second. So the students prefer collaborative learning, group projects, peer tutoring, and collective problem solving. Learning is seen as a shared responsibility between the student, the teacher, and the family. Respect for teachers and elders is key. Students may hesitate to question that authority. Success is shared, and when one succeeds, it reflects on the entire group, not just the individual. And teachers are often viewed as moral guides and community figures, not just instructors. So you'll see that in the US, although we are more of an individualist culture, we do borrow some from the collectivist cultures, especially when it comes to collaboration and group work. However, there is this attitude towards collaboration, and I think it really comes from just poor planning and poor organization on the educator, the teacher's part when it comes to it. So in an individualist culture, let's talk about collaboration. And when I mean collaboration, I mean like working together towards a shared goal. And these do exist in all cultures, not just individualists, not just collectivists, but in all cultures. But the meaning and the motivation, the expectations behind collaboration really differ depending on whether the culture is individualistic or collectivist. So in an individualist culture, the core view, collaboration is often seen as like a means to an end and not the end itself. And people collaborate really to achieve personal goals or to complete a task, but individual contribution like remains important. So autonomy within teamwork. Individuals value their independence even when working with others. Like, I'm going to do my part of the project, you do your part of the project. And that's how it's going to be. This clear division of labor, group members often prefer like very defined roles and responsibilities. Because what happens so often when we do group work, especially people in college and students in college, they always complain like, I hate group work. Why do you hate group work? Think about it. Because one person always ends up doing all the work. And that's why we need to have very clear division of labor. I'm going to have a person over this part of the project. You do this, and you do those so that everyone knows what they bring to the table. So what I started doing in my classes when I had group work, I assigned like individual tasks that each person had to do, and then they put it all together. And you could tell who worked really hard on the presentation and who didn't really care about the presentation. The people who I knew worked really hard got the A. The people who I could tell did it last minute, did not collaborate with the group, didn't even make those connections with the group. They didn't score as well, and they knew exactly why they didn't. So constructive debate is also valued. Expressing the different opinions and disagreeing is seen as part of the problem solving. Recognition, I did skip over this, of personal effort. You know, they want their individual contributions to be noticed and rewarded, and that's what I've started doing when I assign group work. And then collaboration, temporary partnership, it's not necessarily like long-term loyalty. So in contrast to that, the key attitudes for the collectivist culture when doing collaboration is group unity over the individual opinion. So we really want to maintain harmony and respect. It's more important than trying to stand out. Shared responsibility, success or failures belong to the entire group. So you get one score for the group project, not individual scores. Consensus in the decision making, decisions are made through discussion and agreement, not the majority rule. And then indirect communication, criticism or disagreement is expressed subtly to avoid that conflict. And this collaboration, it builds trust and loyalty that in collectivist cultures will go beyond the classroom. It can be long-term. So how does that affect the role of the teacher when we're looking at these different learning styles from these two different cultures and we're looking at like worldview? What can we as the teacher do? So it kind of depends on the authority of the teacher in the culture, the teaching style, and then the assessment focus. So let's look at those kind of the difference between the two. In an individualist, the teacher is a facilitator or a coach and encourages the independence. They also are very student-centered, encourages discovery and then self-exploration. And the assessment really focuses on creativity, originality, and then your individual personal insight, right? However, on the flip side, in the collectivist culture, the teacher is an authority figure, commands respect, and sets moral examples. The teaching style is very teacher-centered, emphasizes guidance, discipline, and structure. And then the assessment really focuses on mastery of the topic, cooperation, and collective improvement. So as teachers, and then also those of you that are going into the workforce, like what can we take away from this, from these different learning preferences and worldviews? And so for those of us working with really diverse classrooms or in a diverse workplace, understanding these two differences really helps avoid frustration and then also just misinterpretation. So let's focus really, because we are in the US, it is a predominantly white culture, and that is what's really taught in K through 12. We do have a lot of cultural diversity, but as far as like American schools are, like how we learn, that's kind of what I want to set this up as. So when you are in the classroom, silence from your students, silence from your coworkers in a meeting, that does not mean they are disengaged, right? That just means that for them culturally, especially when you have Hispanic students or you have Asian students, for them culturally growing up, you weren't supposed to really talk a lot and engage a lot. So they are going to remain silent. You want to use a variety of participation formats, not just Q&As, not just collaborative stuff. You really want to do all of the different assessments that you can think of and that are easy for you to bring into your K through 12 classrooms, but then also like feedback from your coworkers. Some want to meet face to face. Some would rather just send you an email. So allow those, and just understanding that it's nothing against you as a teacher or a leader in your work. It's just how they prefer to communicate and how they prefer to learn. Also balance the individual and the group tasks. Like group projects should be very clearly defined roles that we're talking about, so everyone knows exactly what they should be doing. And then also encourage that open discussion and debate, but teach respectful disagreement. It is totally fine to disagree with each other in class, but it's not okay to argue and to fight with one another. That's not respectable disagreement. Respectable disagreement is Q&A, and at the end of it, we can agree to disagree. So keep those in mind as you're going through and as you're doing the assignments for this week. Not very hard assignments, but hopefully this gives you a little bit better understanding of what we mean when we talk about the influences on the cultural influences on learning preferences and then our worldviews.